So let me make some introductions for you. To my immediate right is Richard Huddy. He's Chief Gaming Scientist for AMD. I've always wanted to see his lab. One day I will. To his right is Frank Vitz. He's now Creative Director at Crytek. Frank's, of course, like our other panels, has had an illustrious career. You're going to have to tell us what squinching is. Frank, actually, just something that you might be familiar with. How many of you have seen the first X-Men movie? Special effects. So if memory serves, you did the special effects for Mystique, yes? Okay, wonderful work. David Cole is Next VR, 360-degree VR with light field. You're going to have to explain it. Ethan Scher, Chief Marketing Officer for Immersion Viralia, up-and-coming virtual reality as well as augmented reality hardware manufacturer, and then some. Bertrand Neveu, CEO for Vervana, also wonderful HMD manufacturer, and Colin Chin, who's Executive Vice President and co-founder for Silicon Arts. If you ever need to know anything about ray tracing and up-and-coming VR, Colin's your man. So, and last but not least is Dr. John Petty, who runs John Petty Research, publisher for TechWatch, and tremendous mentor, tremendous Rolodex as well. And he is one of the top analysts in the graphics industry. So if you want to know what direction the wind is blowing, you got to ask John. So welcome. Thank you. Please give a round of applause.
What these pictures were designed to represent, you can see we have the early versions of stereo, early version of virtual reality. Virtual reality is certainly not a new thing. I think most of you know that. You can trace it back to the 60s. But it's always been a difficult thing. It's an idea that everybody signs up for almost instantaneously. Easy to visualize, not easy to implement. And so we also have a problem of, when we talk about immersive technology, what the hell is immersive technology? And so we're trying to figure out what it is we're even doing. Is immersive technology a cave? Is it a holodeck? Is it Oculus glasses? Is it stereo TV? But what exactly is this thing? I don't know if we're going to have that answer today, but we'll all start thinking about it. Maybe we can come up with an answer. So I want to see if we can get some of those answers. And to do that, we have this illustrious panel. We now met. We have them all there, not quite the same order. And this is designed to be interactive. The whole idea of asking these guys to come and join us. I apologize if they're over guys. But the whole idea of asking them to join us is so that you could get your specific questions that you have about immersive technologies answered by this illustrious panel. So it's not about me standing up here lecturing you, it's about you talking to them. I'll kick it off. I have a few questions, which I don't expect to get all asked. But I'll kick it off and I want you not to be shy. I want you to jump in and start asking questions. This is a great group of experts here. You're not often going to have this at your disposal, so take advantage of that. And with that, you just ask the panel, we'll just do it like that. What lessons do you think we learned or should have learned from stereo 3D that we need to relearn in VR?
Stereo 3D. Main lesson that you should learn from stereo 3D. Am I well heard, or do I need to hold the mic up?
Hold the mic. If you press the buttons around, yeah. You're good.
Are you recording this?
Pardon me?
Are you recording this?
Yeah.
So I think the trouble with stereo 3D was that there's a superficial attractiveness to it, which really people didn't find an acceptable way for consumers to take advantage of it. I don't wear specs these days. I have my eyes lasered, but when I first looked at buying myself a TV, I had to wear specs as well as specs. That didn't feel great, and these days, having got rid of the specs, I don't want to have to put specs on. I'm the only one in my house. There's 4 of us in the house, 2 sons and a wife, and I'm the only one who will watch stereo 3D. The others resent the glasses that much. I think it's an awful shame, but that makes me 25%. I don't expect to be in the minority on this stuff, but you have to make it more acceptable to consumers, number one.
Okay. You all understand the question?
Yeah, that's a big topic. I think that for me, I've been involved in lots of odd visioning, projection techniques and visualization techniques through my career. And the problem is exactly what you're saying, making it presentable to to the user. If they don't feel comfortable, feel like they're totally immersed in it, and the problems we face in stereoscopic 3D are just amplified in VR because all of the problems of latency and responsiveness and your sense of being there are amplified. So the lessons are we just need to do a better job of controlling them.
So I have a perspective from the 3D TV business. Our company was serving, doing encoding and compression for 3D television. And so my answer would be quality of experience. Anything less than high quality of experience is toxic. An executive from Best Buy who's in charge of recruiting all the equipment for in-store demos of 3D TV once told me that they had more returns for 3D television and shutter glasses than they actually sold. And he wasn't kidding. I mean, it was so 3D TV died for the sins of bad eyewear and bad quality. And I think there is a danger here. I mean, I think we've all seen VR that isn't good, that makes you sick. And so we do stand the danger if this quality of experience starts to take us down the same path it did with 3D TV, that we either get VR gets relegated to the novelty bin, or worse, it's killed off like 3D TV.
Yeah, I agree. I think every 10 years is sort of a 3D craze, and the 3D TV craze started in 2005, maybe with the Polar Express, and now we're 10 years later, and we're in another one. And I think two things are really important. One, when we talk about standards, so 3D TV, they were transmitting stuff in side-by-side formats, half resolution, it wasn't compatible, and people rejected that. That was a big problem. And so I think here at the ITA we have a big opportunity to do it right this time with the standards. And another thing is about freedom of choice. When people wanted to watch Avatar in 3D, they had to buy a Panasonic player. There's no other way to watch Avatar, and I think that was very damaging. So let's try to do things different.
Yeah, so I don't want to repeat all those great ideas, but I think content is king, so you need great content, and where it's not that much great 3D content. And I would say the pain of wearing glasses was too much for the added value of 3D content at that time.
I've seen some successful stories in the movies and theaters about stereoscopic 3D applications. However, it wasn't that successful in TV, and the main reason is because of the technological barriers. I think we do have some technologies right now that can be applied in VR, which will be really successful for the immersive experiences.
All right, so this is hopefully the last question I'll ask, and then you guys will ask some. VR in the consumer space came and went in the 90s, to your point about every 5 years. It's a very good point. I don't know if you remember the Sega thing or not, but it came and went, and for a lot of reasons. So what's going to be different now? You can't walk through GDC without people stopping you and talking to you about VR. Is it going to be any better?
Stop this end again.
We're going to end up with
Points down.
Starting down that. Colin, you go first.
As I said, we do have some technologies that are really useful for immersive experiences. And I do see that starting out with 360-degree video streaming contents, we can create some ecosystem for VR. And eventually, with the help of new technologies such as ray tracing, sound rendering, kind of VR-focused technologies, we can elevate this mood to be successful in 2-year time.
Yeah, so I agree. It's all about technology. Now we have access to low persistence, high resolution displays, high resolution cameras, super fast GPUs, low latency. I think we needed a lot of those technology for VR to succeed, and we have them. We have all those stepping stones. So now I think it will be more about content. You can have the best HMD or input device or anything. If you don't have great content, it will not be successful. So I think that's where the money is right now, is creating great content and a standard also for VR, every industry to work together.
Yeah, I think the the technology now is slightly better than it was in the 90s, and now we have NVIDIA video cards, we have ray tracing, and my smartphone's a lot better than it was in the 90s too.
So my company actually built that Sega HMD product, so you heard me bad. And I'm sorry, I apologize. The Dream definitely outran, and the hype outran the technology in the 90s, there's no question about it. Tracker, jitter, resolution, field of view was just dismal. I mean, you turned your head and the world moved seconds later. But that wasn't all bad, because it left a lot of time for really smart people to pontificate about what VR could be when you were unbounded by actual working hardware. And great things were going on, like an example I like to give is Brenda Laurel's from Integral Research, her sort of great pontification about what would happen in interactive storytelling when VR worked the way it was supposed to. So there was a lot of great thinking in the 90s. I don't think it was a great loss. No, the hardware wasn't there. But right now, I mean, if I had to pick one thing that sort of is the most hopeful news for us, is that the mobile cell phone product cycle is so fast, and the sort of specsmanship around selling smartphones at higher resolution and better pixel densities has been just a phenomenal dividend to make the products that we're using, the HMD products that we're using that are mobile panel based better.
That's great. I agree that the previous forays into VR were sort of premature, and there's a lot of amazing technology now that's making it possible. But one thing that really stands out for me is I keep being amazed at the fidelity of our visual systems and our oral systems, and internally as humans. And we're just now, I think we have crossed the threshold of the fidelity that we need in terms of the latency and resolution, all that. But now we have to put it all together into a system that fools us. And that's where we are today, and that opens up the door for the part that I'm interested in as a creative director, which is now when you have that kind of a system that can give you a compelling experience where you feel like you're really there, what do we do with it? What are the rules of, how do you make a transition? How do you introduce the user interface so that people feel like they're having, we're at the stage that the movie camera was in the early 1900s with virtual reality today, and we're inventing worlds that are going to allow us to tell stories that will make you cry. I haven't seen virtual reality that's made me want to cry yet.
Well, to add to
Tends to make you want to throw up instead.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think if you go back to the 90s, it's pretty clear that what you were looking at was very gimmicky. There are too many drawbacks to the failures in the tech. And if we look at what we have now with the phenomenal throughput of GPUs and CPUs, the amount of memory you can stick on systems, the depth of the content that people are willing to put together, the tech doesn't stand in the way. You can see the things in the marketplace right now which are needed for a really good solution. So I don't want to be wired, I don't want to be tethered. And these early HMDs, they're mostly going to be tethered. But it's very clear that we can do wireless. Yeah? We have a wireless connection here, I suspect, where one can talk to the internet. How fabulous is that? You go back to the 90s, I think I was telling people in the late 90s, probably about 1998, I started telling people photorealistic rendering is about 10 years away. I was pretty close, yeah, maybe 20 years out or so. These days I've changed that ever since the late 90s, all the way through to the mid-2000s, the noughties. I was saying people, still about 10 years away, sorry about that, looks like I might have underestimated. These days I've brought my estimate down to about 5 years away now, and I think that means that in 2 years' time, we really can have interesting content, terrific delivery systems, and it'll be much more acceptable. It isn't necessarily for everyone. I guess Facebook's acquisition says it is for everyone. There will be 1 billion users. For me, I'm not convinced that it's that widespread an attraction, but I think we can solve all the technical problems, and we can do that in a short period of time.
So, to Richard's point about wireless, the Samsung Gear is wireless. You just hang it on your face and you can see what you want to see. The other point I'd like to make is that the aspect of VR today is highly supported, I should say, by the low-cost sensors that the mobile phone industry has brought us. The supply chain in mobile phones has driven the cost of sensors down for accelerometers and geopositioning and so forth, and that's been a major, major breakthrough. With that as a background, then the question I want to ask is,
are HMDs going to be the way we get VR? Or can you guys imagine or envision some other way other than a cave?
Plug something into the back of my head and do it near start.
You've got a whiteboard now.
I'd probably be okay with that if I wasn't the first person to take the experiment. Luckily for me, there are other people out there who are braver than I and who would be first. So yeah, I wouldn't mind direct implant into my nervous system. That would be okay. Like I say, so long as someone tries it first. I think in the short term, we'll go for HMDs, and so long as they can get light and not give you a headache in 30 minutes. There are two sorts of gamers in the world. We play on 100,000 different platforms. But there are two sorts of gamers. There are people who want to pick a game up. Saw a wonderful presentation by Epic a handful of years ago. And I always prefix this point by saying it was actually by Epic, where they said that when they're designing for handheld, they make sure that you can play it while you're on the toilet. Yeah, because you have 2 or 3 minutes of attention span you're willing to dedicate to that game. So if you can't play it when you're on the toilet, they haven't satisfied it. Yeah. Or there are the other folks who are at the reasonable end of the scale, the decent end of the scale for gaming. They'll sit down in front of a PC or a console and they'll play for literally hours. But if you look at those two different kind of audiences, I think with an HMD, if there's a decent amount of weight on it, 100 grams or more, 100 grams or less, no problem. Go up to 250 grams, then it's a bit tiring. Keep it under half an hour, so you need to work that for casual games. And then it's a matter of producing the right content. Understand the rules of what works and what doesn't work for VR, and away you go.
It's interesting, head mounted display, the aspects of their adoption, I think, there's a whole list of them. The style aspect is one of the things that seems to be prevalent in a lot of people's minds. We need to have Oakley and Ray-Ban designing the head mounted displays so people will actually want to wear them. I've seen a few designs going in that area, and getting smaller, certainly helpful. But technology, they had a thing in SIGGRAPH a couple of years ago, remote controlled humans where you put on a headset, and you could drive people around, and they put it on me, and I said, this is working great. I feel like I know where I'm supposed to go. Am I supposed to be seeing these purple flashes? Said, did you sign a non-disclosure? And the technology can't be invasive because there's lots of retinal implant displays and things like that we could do. I don't know. The jury's still out on me. I've always been a technology adopter. I love the toys, but if my wife won't put the glasses on, we're not going to have VR in our house.
I definitely think the future is wearable, whether or not it conforms to what we think of as an HMD right now or not. I'm not sure. One of the distinctions is where you could potentially put the projector with the advent of retinal projection, particularly digital light field retinal projection, and the stuff that Magic Leap is working on, which I think, knowing, I can't say a whole lot about it, but knowing what we do know as developers, the objective of companies like that, of Magic Leap, to make a really comfortable device with that is truly retinal projection, would have been an incredible story if they hadn't just raised the second largest Series B round in the history of the world, almost $600 million to do exactly that. And so I think sort of are thinking about a flat screen in front of a set of lenses hanging on your face is probably not necessarily the future.
Yes, I agree. The future is some sort of wearable device, and I don't believe that people rejected 3D because of glasses. In fact, I'm a fan of more things on the face, and to those people that say that you're going to have glasses for your auto stereoscopic television, that's perpetually 10 years off, and you'll see the flying car before you see that.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first step is HMD, but I prefer the neocortex, direct input. I think that's the future path I'm looking for.
As I agree with all the points that HMD will be the short-term medium for VR applications, but from my personal experiences, people having glasses on, I think there should be something very light version of the lens that can be attached to the glasses, so that they can have we can have more variety of choices.
So that's enough questions for me. You guys must have some. There's one.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Justin from the Zero Review. So right now, as far as VR, I am ecstatic. Like, I've been expecting this for the past, 20-so years. So
Hang on, you want to guess what I might?
yeah. Oh, you don't need to. I mean, drink a bit. It's kind of sweet. All right. So more or less, I guess what I'm trying to get at right now is, right now the expectation for VR is astronomical. Like, a lot of people are looking at Oculus Rift, Morpheus. I'm going to that later today. I'm excited, and I know a lot of other people are, and I've been writing about it for a while. But what it comes down to is, and what I'm seeing is, I guess in the industry now, it's all about accessibility, right? And you guys were talking about it before. It's not only about content. It's not only about technology. It's how everything meshes together. And with the expectations as they are right now, as high as they are, right? How are we going to make it as accessible, as useful, as easy to pick up and put down in the living room, so that it is a success? Because I really don't want it to become a novelty. I want it to be essentially my next, I want to sit in my mom's basement with the glasses on, completely dead to the world, and just understanding, and I'm completely immersed in this new world. That's sort of what I dream of, kind of, sort of. But I guess my question is, how, if we were to make it accessible, would it be under one roof, or would it be specialized between all different types of people coming together trying to make it? I guess that's my question.
Question obvious?
Maybe I can just start slowly with that. Well, I think a gaming engine are being standardized right now. They put interface for HMD VR. There's some standard being developed right now for that. So I think it will be standardized. You'll make content for every HMD out there, and it will depend on your platform of choice. If you're more of a PlayStation fan, you go on that. If you want the latest, best graphic, you'll go on PC. If you want wireless, you'll go on Samsung Gear. So it depends.
But are you, I guess, a little worried that there's too much that any particular consumer needs to make sure they have? So, for instance, I know computer games right now, some of them run on crazy graphics. They need the FPS to be 60 or above. With VR, you need to make sure, as you were saying before, it's got to be good, otherwise you throw up. So, I guess worrying about the equipment, is that something that we as users need to worry about in the future, or are we already there? Is the technology ready?
Well, I think we're there, but you need a seal of approval on content. You need someone to approve prior to launching, say, okay, with a good HMD, a good graphic cards, you'll not throw up. And then consumer will know. They say, okay, if it's approved by ITA standard, then it's good. So I think we need that.
Okay.
Well, from the perspective of immersion, Borelli, I think that you shouldn't have to worry about that. And it's a free country, and you should be able to use whatever device you want to use. So, for example, with our device, you can put any smartphone in there. It can be iOS, Android, any size, doesn't matter. And with our SDK and our UltraSpace platform, you can play back content for any device. I think that was one of the problems with the 3D industry, and I think now we need to let the user have the freedom to use the device they want to watch the content that they want.
So I think Sony is a grand experiment in this space because it's a sandbox, it's a closed system, but they are definitely leading in terms of building a solution that grandma can go out and buy at Toys R Us, put it under the tree, it can be opened and in 10 minutes you can be in and enjoying it. Will that limit developers because of the capabilities of the hardware? To a certain extent. Maybe it won't be the highest end VR experience you can have, but I certainly think in terms of everything that's sort of on the horizon right now, it's the one that meets your sort of homogenized solution. You don't have to know anything about it or worry about it, unpack it and use it. And we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much to add to that, but I do agree that getting that seamless experience is what's going to make it
If it's not
get the
seamless,
broad
it's
adoption
gonna-
that we need. We're kind of, to me, I still feel like we're in the early stages. We have all the pieces, like we've said, but we don't have them all together under the support of shared standards that are going to make it easy to adopt. I like flexing with my stereo system. It drives my wife crazy, with 4 remote controls and things like that. I want to avoid that. I think it's going to succeed.
So I think the comment about market dynamics is key here. I think there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of money chasing this opportunity, really a staggering amount of money chasing this right now. And that means we're going to get good solutions. The tech is clearly there in all sorts of ways. It's possible to take carbon fibre and stuff like that and make therefore extremely light units. And when you get from prototypes, switch from prototypes or very early builds into third or fourth generations, or the mass market kind of production that we'll be looking at in 2 or 3 years, just a relatively short period of time, then you will see very high quality, relatively unintrusive solutions in place. I think there's enough money chasing this and enough technology companies chasing it, not just NVIDIA cards from one company, but AMD makes a few as well. There are lots of folk who are after this. Yeah, competition is the essence of it, and our SDK is one component of that. Absolutely, I would expect more standards and more innovation from NVIDIA and the other companies here. There is a lot of reason to chase this stuff at the moment.
Are we worried that if anything comes out before that 2 or 3 year period when we're ready, that might, I guess, sully the market, and they would think that it's just a gimmick, and that all this work might alter the price?
Me personally, I think that there's enough variety that probably won't be a big issue, but we could do without having bad products out there. That won't help.
The light swing HDR is carbon. Yeah. Looks better than that.
It's true. It's true. I don't know how weather resistant it is.
Where's VR head sit outside? Anybody else do it? Yes, sir.
Yeah, every emerging technology always has something that kind of leads the way. The internet had a few things if you were around back then. What do you think between gaming, various forms of content, and where do you think will be those drivers that really propel it from something that's in a room like this to in the main halls everywhere you go in terms of the conversation in the market?
So for me, I think there are 2 really attractive uses of VR which are pulling on it right away. But there's a little bit more to it than that. So I think the 2 attractive ones are social and advertising. Facebook and Google, although they do social and they do searches, they're really just advertising. It's all just advertising. And I suspect that there will be a great deal of advertising money that chases this stuff. And that's one reason why it continued to be pushed on super hard. But I think one of the attractions of VR tech is that it can be used in lots and lots of different ways. And if you look at the slide decks that we all put about when we talk about VR, we have this wide range of different experiences which can be enabled in interesting ways. And I think that the money chaser is advertising, but there are other opportunities that make it fun too, which will genuinely make this a growth market.
Yeah, I'm a bit biased because my recent experience has been in game engine development, with Frostbite and with CryEngine. So I think a lot of the part that I find compelling is taking an engine like CryEngine, which has the power of first-person perspective and lush environments and worlds, and trying to tell game stories. So for me, the gaming space is a place that's going to drive compelling experiences. But to your point, the applications are manifold.
My bias is about 180 degrees out of phase for years. Is it interesting what happened when mobile became a thing in VR? When the sort of the Gear VR, the veil was lifted sometime around August of last year on Gear VR. The thinking I think that most of us had was this was a gaming product, right? VR was a gaming platform. But the mobile demographic has changed that. In fact, the use case around some of the traction around content going down to the Gear VR devices, live action content is very much a high use of that hardware. In fact, when Mark Zuckerberg announced the purchase of Oculus, he used as an example for a compelling, a high compelling use. Imagine sitting courtside at a basketball game. And so we really think live action. Our sort of NextVR's approach is to take our technology and go out to the largest fan bases in the world, the NBA, the NHL, Premier Leagues like Manchester United, who by the way have over 600 million fans worldwide, over half of them in Asia. People will never be able to attend those games and put them in those experiences that they want to have. We think that's a big killer app.
Yeah, I think some of the standards they're working at the Kronos Group with the WebGL and the GLTF streaming, where you can stream these virtual reality experiences from the cloud, will really enable a new Web 3 3.0, where people are interacting and experiencing social media and entertainment in a fundamentally different way?
For us at Nirvana, it's really presence that's the killer app. You can have any great VR content, but you need to deliver presence. You need to feel teleported in that virtual world, and in a very intuitive and simple way. So why Apple was so successful? Because my mom can use it and not call me every week and say, how do I set up my email or whatever. I bought her an iPad and I'm free, so I want something like that in VR, that I can give it to anyone, no manual needed, and you can just enjoy VR with presence.
I think presence is really important for VR, but at the same time, past and future is also important, because that will give you very unprecedented experiences. So for instance, if you want to go back to your childhood, you can, if there is an applications, I think that will give you an amazing experiences going back to your school days and, you know, enjoy your life. But obviously the gaming will be the main driver for VR.
David looked a little nervous there. Do you want to answer that, David? No. Maybe not nervous. Maybe nervous wasn't the right answer, but I know you've had a lot of success.
Listen, we're happy to ride on the coattails of gaming. Okay, that's good.
If gaming is a Trojan horse, that's just fine with us. But we do have, you know, the I think indication even from some of the manufacturers now is unexpectedly live action content is a high part of the initial use, and that may just be because of the capabilities of the hardware. The gaming experiences take longer to sort of mature. It's easier, not a whole lot, but easier to go out and acquire some content for live action and put it in the experience. So, but you know, this is important because some of the first user experiences are with live action content. So we're definitely part of the use case, and I would argue maybe we don't have to be the killer app, but we're definitely in the running.
Yeah. For me, the use of the game engine, I speak of gaming not only from the experience side, but for me it's also on the rendering side. In fact, I want to talk to you a little bit more about light field rendering, because I also think that the graphics rendering capability of the gaming engines now is getting the closest in real time to being able to do light field rendering and to be able to integrate synthetic imagery with real live action, whether it's augmented reality or adding, you know, gaming components to a real world. That's where we're going to get some of those experiences where, you know, people are going to go, holy shit, I've never seen anything like that before. Or it reminds me of something I've never seen before. That's really got something.
Yeah, I'll throw one comment in on gaming, since gaming is kind of a specialist subject for myself and for AMD. And that is that one of the pleasant surprises about it is that you don't just carry all the games that you used to have and bring them to VR. It doesn't work. You get a lot of games that simply won't work in that situation. You have to constrain what the player will want to do or try to do in a game if you want to make it work. Otherwise, it will often be a frustrating or confusing experience. And I think that's a good thing. It's particularly a good thing because it creates a Wild West. This is the inflection point where new people can come in, and while I have plenty of respect for Crytek, you know, if you get a situation where you have a relatively small number of players, then you tend to get less innovation. And I think this is an exciting opportunity for new folks to get into gaming and to find out what the new rules are and implement them. So I've got nothing against gaming. I think it's a great opportunity for VR. And actually, I think innovation in gaming will be spurred by this quite aggressively. It's really good.
Can I have a follow-up question to that? Nobody has to answer this if you don't want, but I'm kind of trying to set you guys up. Believe it or not, I was working in the internet in the 90s era, and one of the biggest drivers was adult content that really got the technology going. So you don't have to answer it. I understand if you don't want to, but I was curious that, you know, if anyone wants to talk about that, and anyone thinks that that could be another driver of this again, because in the end, it's being real.
Yeah, I'm okay with having an implant in the back of my head, but I don't want to be first to that. Should I maybe volunteer not to be first to answer on adult content? One of the best things about adult content is if you ask people in a public forum, 90% of men say, sorry, not that interested. And yet, if you go to hotels and ask them how many rooms use adult content, you'll find that it's 90%, but the other way. So I guess there's an opportunity there. In the late 90s, when I started really getting into 3D, I can remember Lara Croft having a staggering 300 triangles. She was gorgeous, yeah? 300 triangles. These days, I don't know what it is, maybe 250,000, 2 million, something like that, depending on where she is in the scene. And she's significantly more gorgeous than she was. I suspect you need more than 1 million triangles to make her that interesting. But we can, you know, I guess we can get some of the way, but people will be a little bit shy about buying their VR systems from Ann Summers or whatever the shops are that you guys have here in the US.
It's contact sport with your clothes on.
It is, and I'm a huge fan of contact sports, I have to say that. But
just, you know, get in perspective, it's just another form of entertainment.
Let me pass the microphone along.
Yeah. Right.
Well done. So the number of polygons, the number of triangles required to adequately render, this is going to be a SIGGRAPH paper pretty soon. Adequately stimulate the human limbic system. We get the question all the time because we're in live action VR, and it's not an area that we address as a company. It's not a market segment that we spend that we're approaching simply because of the brands we're working with now, and it would be somewhat toxic. However, the displays are perfect. They're private displays. Nobody can see what you're looking at. Some of the experiments that have been done already, and it's out there, are cool. And I think, you know...
It was done in the 90s.
Yeah, it was done in the 90s. It was done in 3D TV, and it's being done in VR now, and it's pretty cool stuff. I mean, it's innovative. It's not schlocky and stupid always. Sometimes it's innovative and cool. I mean, I really think there's an art form, and maybe it's going to get better. One of the jokes I said, you know, we have a 360 solution, right? So in order for it to work for us, it has to be like a full-on Caligula-style orgy to build a killer app.
Every time there's a new display medium, people say that it's porn that's going to drive it, but I don't really see any evidence of that. I didn't see that with 3D television, and not really with HD either. I think it's just a knee-jerk reaction that people say, but I don't really buy it.
Yeah, there's not a week that there's not someone that tells us about porn and VR, and I think it's normal. We provide a tool that gives you presence. You do whatever you want with that tool. So I think people will do the same thing they do on mobile or TV. They'll do it in VR, and it's fine with us.
So it sounds like you do what you like with the tool, yeah? Boom, it'll be here all week.
Actually, you know, we already acquired the technology that can make it realistic. I think ray tracing in real time will kind of, you know, enrich that kind of content and give more of the traction and further the VR ecosystem.
Shiny sex.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry, it's not about the naked people. Well, you know, we've been talking so much about the experience. We've been talking about the display, but you know, let me explain it this way. There's this expression, the rendering hour, and you know, if you have so much computational power within an hour, you'll be able to process X much data. But what happens is, as the technology improves, people say, oh, you know what, I'm going to be able to do so much more in this hour. You know, I'll be able to do twice the content in an hour than before. But no, what they do is they add more special effects, and they add more eye candy, and you're still stuck with that hour of time for processing time. So when we're looking at the VR world, it's stereoscopic content, so we have to process a left-right view. We've got low latency. You know, in the case of broadcasting 360 VR content, you know, there's a lot more content being distributed at a time versus before. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement around the technology, so people, you know, companies are pursuing it very hard. How radical an improvement are we going to be seeing in processing power in the short term than we would otherwise, thanks to immersive technologies like virtual reality?
Zero. It's all gated by Moore's law. It just moves at the same rate. There's not going to be any step function.
Do you agree, or what's?
You want me to pre-announce products, that kind of stuff?
No, yes. Just
Just between you and me? Fair enough. My current guess is that you need about a factor of 1,000 on the horsepower that we have right now in our current kind of model of GPU. You need about 1,000 times more horsepower than you have right now in order to render VR in a truly photoreal way that you don't see pixels, you don't see artifacts anyway. And it's not terribly hard to take that factor of 1,000 and then take it apart using Moore's law and say, okay, factor of 2, 3 factors of 2, that's essentially a factor of 2 every 18 months is the claim in Moore's law, yeah.
2 years, it's easier now.
Okay, if we pretend it's 2 years, then you get a factor of 10 every 6 years, so my factor of 1,000 comes along in 18 years. It's a shame that we have to wait that much, but we can accept some compromises along the way. And that is only for chasing photoreal. So I guess if you want to step back to adult content, then yeah, 18 years, there you are, bang on the dot. You can set your clock and we'll be able to give you that photoreal experience. But you're right about movies, they constantly have this extra complexity. When I was a kid and I went out and saw the first Star Wars movie, I thought, wow, that is just astonishing. And now I look at it and now, how lame, what is the matter with these people? Did they know nothing in the late 70s? Oh yeah, it was the late 70s and it was an astonishing thing. So I think give us a factor of, give us something like half a decade and we'll give you pretty convincing photoreal rendering in some situations. But will people have higher ambitions? That's one of the best things about this business. Yeah, people absolutely, from everyone along here, I expect to have much higher ambitions than just, hey, can we match reality? We can do a lot better than that. The human imagination is far more fertile, I would say.
I don't have much to add to that. I definitely agree. One thing that we're lucky about is that people's level of expertise does evolve with technology. So your point about the 70s explosion was looking like they were just black powder charges, which is what they were. What we're doing now is going to be really, holy cow, and 5 years from now, people will be looking at it and going, oh, that looks lame. So we just have to stay ahead of the curve. And we don't need photorealism. We prove in our designs that, we can come up with something that's compelling without having a photoreal. So along the way, we're going to have some pretty exciting stuff too. So for what it's worth, I think we'll get there.
I think the hardware is already being pushed by VR. If you look at Vuforia from Qualcomm, they've taken a ton of functionality required for AR, for positional tracking and feature finding using the camera, and just pulling the tracker, internal tracker on the Snapdragon product, which is like 85% of all smartphones, and they've shifted it to the DSP in Snapdragon in order to unburden the CPU and GPU and keep the heat down. And those kind of optimizations are happening now, and they may happen at a software layer, or they may happen, at sort of an optimization layer by the manufacturer. But this is specifically now targeting, the kind of applications that we need these phones to run fast and do. We push the decoder, the video decoder on mobile devices right to the metal. And Qualcomm has, again, been very, very helpful there to help optimize the video engine throughput so that we can decode 360 3D videos as quickly as we need to. So I think the hardware manufacturers are hearing it. Definitely on the mobile side, we know they're hearing it and are going to respond.
Yeah, I never disagree with John Petty's predictions. He's astonishingly accurate futurist. The only thing I would add is to look to the virtual GPU, the vGPU, and the cloud to help with this.
I think also eye tracking will help a lot in VR. We're experimenting with that, so you only need to render where the user is looking. So there's a way to, you don't need to render photorealistic everywhere, every pixel. You don't just do it where the user is looking. And I think that will help a lot.
The hardware technology, especially on the semiconductor side, has been the driver for VR to be realized. But I think it's more important from the ecosystem side, where the developers are really eager to invest themselves in. And that's really important to maintain this mood for success.
I'd add to it an amplification of what he said, looking here, is that the hardware won't move. Sorry.
The hardware won't move any faster than it's been moving, and Richard's law is going to be just fine. And by the way, speaking of laws, what Neil is referring to is known as Blind's law, where your rendering time stays the same regardless of how much horsepower you put into it. It's because we just want to get more beautiful pictures. But to his point, the big movement will be in algorithmic work. And so the hardware is there, and it's going to keep on getting better and better. But you're going to see more clever algorithmic work, better game engines. By the way, we have a new game engine in town, Autodesk. Didn't see that when it was released. There's a sign right there. If Autodesk is entering the game engine business, that says there's got to be something there, or they wouldn't be doing this. So I think we're going to have a lot of improvement in software, which is solely needed. We've been waiting for the software companies to catch up with the hardware guys for decades, and maybe VR will be the impetus for them to do that.
Anything to that? Anybody? No, Bill's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. As far as I know, this is the only panel, and all GDs, maybe I'm wrong, that spoke of the naked people. So you can. Okay, anyway, thank you so much for coming. And by all means, if you want more refreshments, they're available.